Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. This is episode 7, and today I am interviewing somebody that's in some ways quite a hero to me, and it's actually quite surreal for me to have Debbie Hill on my podcast. I first heard the name Debbie Hill in 2005. At that point, Debbie had no idea who I was. And I just was working for a friend and partner of Debbie's. And, I only heard the greatest things from her and many other colleagues of ours that had interfaced with Debbie at some points in their life. And that name, Debbie Hill, just stuck with me for years and years and years. And in 2009, I was then graced with the opportunity to eventually work with this marvel called Debbie Hill. And I must say, when I eventually did get the opportunity to work with Debbie, everything that I'd heard up to that point was actually didn't do justice to the marvel that was Debbie Hill in terms of her humility, in terms of her expertise, and just in terms of the human being that she is. So without Debbie knowing it, she's been a silent mentor to me over the years, and I've always followed her on LinkedIn and other pages just to, see what she's been up to. And she's really been a massive inspiration to me without her knowing it over the years. So Debs, welcome to the High Living Podcast. It is my absolute privilege to have you on here. And good morning. How are you doing?
Thank you, Sean. Wow, what an introduction. I'm doing very well, thank you, and I'm privileged to be on your show, and I'm very much looking forward to having some great conversations with you and sharing our experiences over the years. So thanks for the awesome intro.
Yeah, I know. And that intro wasn't something I prepared. It was just something that came to my mind at this point in time, and there was a lady by the name of Lydia, and I'm sure you remember Lydia. I believe that she was your assistant at some stage.
Yes, I remember Lydia. She worked for us at IOPOR and Envision.
Yes. I thought she was your public relations officer at some stage. Yeah, wonderful. But Debs, that's the thing about the power of the way one conducts themselves, and the power of understanding your personal brand and living the values, especially when you're in a leadership position. You've had so many leadership positions over the years, from working at Accenture right up to the top, to now, or not now, but to then moving into the entrepreneurial space. Can you give us a bit of an overview in terms of how your life has sort of morphed over the years?
Sure. Sean, I must say, even if I go back to when I was a kid at school, and I grew up in Zimbabwe and went to school there, and we had an amazing school system there at the time. And it was really interesting because at senior school, I loved sport. I loved team sports, but I also excelled at individual sports as well. And I honestly believe, when you are, 17, 18, or from, those kind of early years in your teens, you start to learn the traits of being a leader, whether you're playing an individual kind of sport or you're in a team. And I honestly kind of think the foundations of who I was were kind of set there at school days, playing sport, enjoying it, being with people I love to be with. And I always felt there was a need for me to, spread the word. That does sound a bit corny, but I always felt there was a need for me to help people succeed. I inherently am an achiever, and in fact, now that I'm a strengths-based Gallup certified coach, my strengths are very much in the kind of role of connectedness and connecting with people. And what I've found throughout the years, and I'll share with you my journey, is it's always been a case of I love mentoring and helping people, and I get a kick out of it. For me, that's more important than actually achieving or building a company or becoming successful in a role. And for me that it just gives back, and actually quite interesting. When I was about 20 odd, I thought I'd go into the ministry, and my word, I mean, that was quite a thing, which never really happened. But that's the kind of I guess give out, give back that I was feeling at the time. So when I started my career, actually my working career, I went to university in Natal. Of course, we partied up a storm, didn't do much work, and I kind of changed my degree halfway through. I was meant to be this mega accountant, which I really am not. And I started going into economics, and that's when I had my first taste of business data processing, if you will. So managed to get a job. These banks used to come and recruit us, and got a job at Barclays at the time and was a developer. I was so bad at developing. I was atrocious. In fact, I often laugh. I don't know if you're aware, Sean. Do you remember those Van Zyl and Pritchard courses, those coding courses?
Yes, I do, in fact.
Okay. Well, I was put on one of those, and every week you used to walk into this corridor, and if your picture was not on the wall, it meant that you'd failed. So I was like, oh my word, every week I used to go in and thinking, oh my word, is my picture on the wall? And for some reason it managed to, we used that press stick stuff. And I managed to get through that course, but honestly, I was such a bad developer. I was atrocious. My programs used to run so long, the bank was like, oh my word, I think Debs is a bit of a hazard. So I thought, this is not kind of working for me. And I've never been a person who sits around for long. I'm very much of an activator. And I then moved on very quickly and felt that I needed to be with people. Being a developer is a great job, but kind of you're dealing with code, and if you're not very good at being a developer, it becomes a little bit disheartening. So I moved on very swiftly into a kind of a people. I think business data processing. There was that space between developer and business analyst, and I kind of thought I'd fit into that. And I went through a number of jobs, and as you do when you're, young and inexperienced. And it was okay. It was okay to job hop, and I did. I mean, for the first 5 or 6 years I job hopped. I just wasn't happy, and I knew there was a place that I needed to be. I knew there was somewhere where I was going to be successful, and I would be able to give back to people. Very, very interesting. When I was around 30, I joined PricewaterhouseCoopers and was given the opportunity to go and implement the then Oracle version, I don't know, FTSAC, 19 FTSAC, at Vodacom. And I was with the Vodacom crew who started Vodacom at Hatfield Gardens. And that was quite amazing for me. It was an amazing journey. I met all of the folks who had started Vodacom, and we implemented Oracle there as PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I learned a lot of humility there. I worked with amazing people from the then KSI days. Michelle de Villiers, I quote her name. I was in awe of her. She was like unbelievable, and I made it my mission to learn from her and understand what she did that made her a leader. So I started to think about how was it that I could actually become someone like her. And I've always seen in my life I've had mentors. And I had a mentor, so I looked at Michelle, I thought, great, I want to be like you. And then I was offered an opportunity to go overseas, and that's when my career actually started to take off. I moved with PricewaterhouseCoopers and lived in London for 4 years and implemented Oracle across Europe. And that was the start of my career, if you will, in Oracle, and of me becoming someone who I wanted to be. And you always look at yourself and you think, where do I want to be in 5 years' time? And then my early 30s, I felt that was kind of where I wanted to be. really want to work in a corporate, but I thought, you know what, it's okay, I can get there.
Debs, at that point you were sort of late 20s, just crossing over into your 30s?
Yes, early 30s.
So it had taken you the better part of just under 10 years from finishing your studies to actually finding your niche.
Yes. And in fact, Sean, I hadn't found my niche yet. So it's so interesting we talk, and I'm getting chills as we're having these conversations, because I still haven't found what I was looking for. It sounds like that song. I think it's the U2 song.
Yes.
I still haven't found this deep need to help people. So be that as it may, let's skip forward a couple of years after London, came back, and then I met, and this is where we talk around opportunities. And I honestly believe in life, these opportunities are like windows, and they literally move from either left to right or right to left, depending on where you are. And I met the most amazing person called Selwyn Brunson. And he asked me to come and join his company called Envision. And I just took the gap. He said, here's some shares, and we don't have anything, but here's some shares. And there were 4 of us in the business who were shareholders, and we started an Oracle company called Envision at Gallimana. Actually, we had the most amazing offices, but we had no clients and no money. But hey, you know, we were young and reckless. We had the dreams of the world, and we knew, though, one of the things that I can give anybody, we had the courage and the conviction, and we trusted ourselves. We trusted ourselves and we trusted each other. In fact, so much so that Accenture at the time had one of the executives who phoned me and basically said, what are you doing to the market? Because we're finding Envision all over the place. How are you doing this? And it was actually word of mouth that we became so successful. So we just took the market by storm, and from there we then were bought out by a company called NAF, New Africa Technology Holdings, and in fact one of the key shareholders there was Cyril Ramaphosa and Jonathan Baird. And we were then offered, and we were bought out in 2000. And that's where I again established an amazing career at a company called Iocor. And I worked with amazing people. Tanya Langban being one of them, who started iFactory, Daniel Robus, who was part of iFactory, Richard Bradshaw. All of those players, I had the privilege to work with them, and I helped to mentor them to be who they are today. And we had the most amazing team. We had the most amazing spirit, and it was around just doing what we loved. And I'm a big proponent of that right now. If you do what you love, then you play to your strengths, and that then you get into the flow of something, and you become successful. It becomes automatic. So that kind of takes me to the Envision days. And then, of course, fast forward a little bit, I was asked by William Mazimba, who was my colleague at Iocor. William was the MD of Accenture. I'm not sure where he's moved on to now, but William and Debbie Zwane, they were Accenture. They said to me, Debs, come along, we would love you to join Accenture and head up the Oracle business, which I did. And I went into a leadership position. I was earmarked to be one of the executives. And when I say earmarked, for me, titles weren't important, and they're still not important. And after a year and a half, I actually left, and they were absolutely gobsmacked. They said, "But you are going to become the senior executive of Oracle, and that's like the big prestige." And I went, "Actually, guys, titles to me don't really mean anything, and I don't believe I'm having an impact. So I think I can do better on my own." And in the days of 2009, 2008, people kind of were like, "Wow, why do you want to do this? Go out on your own and take all the strains." And at the same time, it's amazing how the universe sends us challenges. But I had a tragedy in our family, and my brother passed away, and so we had the tragedy of Mike dying, We had my leaving Accenture. We had a lot of other challenges that were thrown into my path. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to be starting my company now. And that was the birth of Blue Pebble Consulting. So from there on, I mean, actually Blue Pebble has been going now, I think, for about 12 years. We're a small niche company. We do strengths-based coaching. We do future skills for companies, and talking to AI, Sean, we talk around, you know, what's going to be happening to future skills. And we talk around, of course, Oracle and program directorship. And my partner, Linda van der Loo, and my life partner joined me. And this is Blue Pebble, where we are today. So yeah, it's been a journey and a half.
Wow.
One other company that I managed to also spawn was an amazing app company called Squash Lab Communities. And that was with my friend and colleague, Liz Irving, she was the world number 2 squash player, and she coached Nicole David, who was 12 times the British Open champion. And both Liz and I decided that Liz needed some help in the digital transformation space. And so over lots of wine, which did help a lot, she said, Debs, how can I be in 20 places but just be in one place? And we created this amazing app, which you can find on the Apple and Google stores, called Squash Lab Communities. So yeah, been an awesome journey. So thank you for giving me the privilege to let other folks know about it.
You know what's surprising is as you go through your list of people that you've worked with over the years, there's some massive names there. And there's some people that have occupied some really, really, really senior positions. And when you look back on that, Debs, do you still have access to that network? Is that something that you still maintain? Is that one of your secrets one of your recipes that you use in terms of, growing your current business and making sure that you're relevant in the market, being amongst those thought leaders?
Sean, I have to say, if I reached out to William, I would absolutely get a response from him. I haven't spoken to him probably for about 5 or 6 years, but if I popped an email to him, or if I had his number, which I don't, but I absolutely believe he'd be going, oh my word, hi Debs, let's go and have a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And the relationships that I make are very deep. And I'm very honest and transparent in business when I deal with people. They know exactly where they stand with me. I am absolutely transparent when I have transactions. Business is business for me, and my home life is my home life. I don't kind of mix the two. It's a bit of oil and water for me. But in business, I have this mantra that I'm as good as my last performance. And if I can give anyone a lesson learned, is always be on your game and be on your best game. Bring your A game to everything you do. And if you don't feel that it's not your A game, then don't go to your meeting, or rather reschedule it. But always bring your A game, because people will remember for your last performance.
It's so true. It's so true. And you mentioned that you went through a spot, and I'm sorry to hear about your brother, where that, things were sort of bubbling at a T-junction, and you are now faced with all of these challenges, and life was, I can only imagine, quite dark at that stage, with the loss of a loved one and that sort of thing. What was your mindset around working through that and still leaving the comfort of a huge organization like Accenture, where you were so well networked and doing so well? And what was your thought process around, finding the light through the darkness there?
Sure. Now, I must say, when I kind of look back on it and I interpret the feelings I felt at the time, it was dark. I really had to dig deep and trust myself, and trust my friends. I pulled on my friends. I had to provide support to my parents around Mike's passing. I read a lot of self-help books. I researched a lot of positive thinking. I looked at, in fact, at the time, I even looked at going into sort of self-help and doing some studies around positive psychology, it was deep for me. And, if you're going through a personal tragedy, it's always quite difficult to then sort of switch off your mind and put it in a box and try and focus on the work at hand. I was very fortunate that I had a very stable relationship that I could sink into after my working days, and I was able to articulate and communicate my feelings, and I think that was probably, I would say, the key for me, is I could talk about it. I could talk about how I was feeling. I could if I needed to cry, I could laugh. And honestly, my moods went up and down daily. But at the end of it all, I managed to, I guess, just rationalize that this is life, and shit happens, and one has to move on. Because I don't want to be a victim, and I've never been a victim. And at the end of the day, my outlook on such is everything must have a positive reflection. Otherwise, we could all be going back into a negative kind of framework. So I always trying to look at what are the opportunities and the positives that have come out of this. And it was hard for me to do at that time. So with the Accenture, leaving Accenture, I did actually have a few regrets. I thought, oh my word, what have I done? Buyer's remorse. And at the end of the day, I always knew, though, there was a bit of a safety net. If I really, really wanted to go back, I could have just picked up the phone and spoken to William and just said, hey, listen, bad call, can I come back? And those are the quality relationships, if I can give anyone a lesson learned. Build quality relationships. Build people up as you move up. Don't step on them as you go up. Make sure you take people along with you, and thank them and be grateful, because you never know what's going to happen in the next day or so.
Yeah. Is your personal brand and your the sort of way that you operate, even from the time that we worked together to now, I can, even over this call, I can sense your energy is still the same, if I can put it that way. Is that something that you work on? A two-part question here. So is that something that you work on? And do you believe that time of darkness actually forced you into a space where you had to work on the Debbie within, to grow the Debbie within? Because when you're in a dark space like that, material things don't help. Typically, I find.
Yeah, I think look, with any kind of personal tragedy, if you do go through that, that's just a small blip. I'm sure other folks have had, absolutely, more. Look at the pandemic, and folks have passed away. Gosh, we've had so much sadness around that. But look, I just can share with my feelings. As I had a really strong friendship circle. My mom always said to me, if you can count the really good friends on the palm of your hand that you can phone up at any time of night or morning, and they'll be there for you, then you're rich in your friendship. So getting to the question, yes, I think it made me more resilient. And I've got a saying is, shit happens. And you know what? We all just have to either decide how we're going to deal with it. Any environment or any challenge that one has, and I'm sure you've gone through this in your life learnings, it's how we respond to things that will determine our next step. And I chose to respond that I was going to get through this. It wasn't going to mark me. It wasn't going to stop me from doing what I needed to do, because I needed to be there for my folks, for my family, and that's what transpired. I think it did make a significant impact on how I was going to move forward in my life. That was the first thing. And the second thing I'm religious about doing is physical exercise. I have to keep my energy levels up. I always talk around the empty drum beats the loudest, and you can't give what you don't have. So for me to have the energy that I can give out to people, particularly in my coaching, is I go for a mountain bike ride in the beautiful forests of Plettenberg Bay, or I'll go and do a spinning class, which I nearly die at. But it's the energy that I can start to think about things and start to rationalize myself. I have me time, and I think that's really, really important for us as entrepreneurs, and if I can say successful business folks, is you got to have me time. And now that could be, that 5 to 6 in the morning from the 5 a.m. club, or you have a bit of meditation, or you have a mantra that you say that you're grateful and you're open to all opportunities. There's got to be time that you actually fulfill yourself before you can give out. So that's pretty much what I do to try and help with my sort of resilience in challenging times.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that another part that you alluded to there is just having a structure, I think a lot of people wake up every day and it's an ad hoc approach to the day, but one finds that structure and consistency around the structure makes life more predictable. And you begin the day the same way every day, and you sort of even end it the same way every day with a gratitude or whatever you feel appropriate. But it's those little things that go a long way. And I just find that in my own life as well, that being consistent around those if I can call it spiritual practices, exercise, whatever it may be, it's just a nice way of centering yourself, especially before the day commences.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's lots of books around mindfulness and, meditation and that. But I mean, if you take one or two of those practices and you incorporate it into your daily rituals or daily routines, it becomes a habit. And, once it becomes a habit, then it becomes easy and you just do it. I'm also a big advocate of reading a lot of books like by Jay Shetty, The Monk, he sold his Ferrari, and I really do believe, I mean, I'm not a big kind of funky person that goes into the ether and talks about all of this stuff, but I really believe one can take little gems of information from those books. I mean, they're written by really good influences, and they just make sense. And if you apply it to your situation at your work, or you think about it in a quiet time, I really believe those will help you to either move from either a problem that you're trying to solve, or you're in a really good position and it can move you to a higher level.
Sure. Sure. A concept that you mentioned earlier that I just wanted to get your view on and get into a bit deeper was, you mentioned your Gallup accreditation, and you mentioned connectedness. Is that correct?
Correct.
And what is the concept of connectedness in context to Gallup and in context of the way that you practice it?
Okay, interesting. So I'm not sure if you're familiar, or the listeners are familiar with Gallup strengths-based coaching, but there is, it's the Clifton assessment that basically you go and do, and once you've done your assessment, you literally answer a couple of questions, I think, 100 questions or so, and the questions are geared in such a way that it creates an insights report of either you can do your 10 top strengths, or you can do your 34 strengths. And those strengths, typically the philosophy is around, in life, you will have your top 5 strengths, and I'll share with you the connectedness bit now. Your top 5 strengths are your strengths or themes that you use on a daily basis without you even knowing. And then, of course, your top 10 are your themes or strengths that you will pull on, possibly on a daily or second daily basis. But the whole philosophy around strengths-based coaching is about a positive philosophy, whereby your top 5, 10 dominant strengths are, if you actually start to incorporate them in your work, you're going to love your work. Because why? It's because you're strong at what you do. So your strengths are naturally making you stronger. And of course, then with that philosophy, they don't ignore the weaknesses, but they go, well, why do you even want to look at your weaknesses? Let's focus on your strengths. So I mentioned earlier on that one of my top 5 dominant strengths, connectedness, is number 3. And it so resonates with me. In fact, one of my top 5 strengths is activator, maximizer, connectedness, relator, and strategic. And I'm not surprised at them. I mean, activator is like, I like to get things done, and I just go. So I've got lots of energy on that. Maximizer is if given a presentation for an example, I will always find something that I must just do to make it 100%. Sometimes that really does get in the way of stuff. And then, of course, my connectedness is around everything happens for a reason. And whatever event in my life has happened, it's happened for a reason, and it's happened because of the good that it's going to give me. So I'm not surprised. My connectedness was probably one of the top strengths that got me through a lot of my challenges and my celebrations in life, because I really truly believe that, for example, you and I connected for a reason. Everything in my life has happened for a reason, to help me, to further me where I should be, so that I can help people.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Absolutely agree with that. And sometimes it's nice to talk about these concepts, but when things get challenging, it's difficult to implement them. I had a guy from my team the other day who was also going through some personal challenges, and it just his ability to unplug from the challenge and just understand that everything happens for a reason. And you know what I find is that it's not that's the issue. The issue is the surrender part, where people struggle to surrender the control. And just as you say, as you believe that everything is happening for the good, and just be part of the flow instead of holding on to the tree in the middle of the river, if I can put it that way, holding on for dear life.
Yeah, so right, Sean. You're absolutely right. And now in my life where I'm at, I've kind of pivoting my kind of focus now very much into strengths-based coaching and mentoring, purely because I'm just seeing that people are really calling out and they're reaching out. They just want a little nudge. They just want some help. And with that, I mean, I had an amazing coaching session yesterday with an unbelievable person. They're based in Australia. I do a lot of my coaching virtually. So the time sometimes can be a bit of an interesting one. But and she was just saying to me, she said, Debs, it's so liberating, someone listening to me, and for me to be able to surrender and talk about my whatever that was, or my challenge, or my celebration, and I can actually hear the words through my ears. Now that's amazing, for people to actually just have the space and the time to surrender and talk about whatever they need to talk about. And that for me is quite enlightening. It's creating a safe space for someone so that they can feel they can surrender, and they can feel that it's okay. It's okay to talk about this. It's really cool because no one's going to judge you. And, there could be some amazing things that come out of it by talking through either a problem or hey, I had the most amazing day yesterday. And I'm really kind of sensing, very interesting, after the pandemic, a lot of people have come out of the pandemic and they're still a little bit shell-shocked. They're kind of going, oh, okay, now what's going on? We have to now go back to work. There's this hybrid work situation coming in. I don't particularly want to go back because, I'm kind of settled. I've got a habit now. And there's a lot of questions and a lot of, I think, anxiety and uncertainty still after the pandemic. And I'm picking that up in my coaching with chatting to people.
Do you think there's also an element of change resistance after being 2 years of working remote, and people have set up their whole home environments and have made other working arrangements, and now all of a sudden, I think, if I put myself in their perspective, some of the corporates haven't managed it well. They've just said, okay, you guys need to come back now. So there's been very little buy-in, and there's been very little engagement, if I can put it that way. So maybe there is a bit of change resistance in the system as well.
Yeah, I think so. I do think, look, some corporates are quite good at it, and some corporates are pretty shocking at it. And I have a firm belief, because, gee whiz, if companies, if they trust their employees, they've grafted and they've produced over the last 2 years remotely. So, if people want to go back, make it voluntary.
Yes.
And I'm a big proponent of it. People want to go back and socialize and be with the crowd, great. But make it voluntary. Don't make it this like, oh, you have to come back for 2 days of the week because X, Y, Z. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and it just puts more pressure on the system, to be fair.
Yeah, so true, so true.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, in Debbie, the entrepreneur's experience and your experiences around starting Blue Pebble, and I'm going to say this, and I can so relate to some of the challenges that we have as entrepreneurs, but it's not easy starting a business, right?
Yeah.
It's especially it's hard, and especially in those first few years, when the hunger is outpacing the cash flow 10-1, and the passion is outpacing the cash flow, and then you realize there's this lovely thing called cash flow that you need to also sort of balance out. And in your experience, for aspiring entrepreneurs, what would you say are some of the things that you would suggest that people, because what I'm finding nowadays is everyone's got a side hustle. So yes, they work and they do a job that's giving them the most of their income, but they've got something else on the side, which is really their passion project that they're trying to get off the ground, and they're not sure how to do this. From an entrepreneurial perspective, Debs, what do you think are some of the things that could help?
Sure. Sean, if I could just give any advice to someone wanting to start a business, I would absolutely say, do what you're passionate about. First of all, focus on what it is you want to do. Don't be pulled into, all of this grandeur around starting your own business, and you've got 1,400 things that you want to achieve, and you think by doing 1,400 things, you're going to get a revenue stream from it. Focus on the one thing that people want. Build your service or product that people want. Don't build your product and service that you think people want. So I'd absolutely make sure that you've got the right service and product that is going to sell. And secondly, I'd absolutely make sure that you've got the cash to see you through. Cash flow is king. You might have the most amazing revenue and invoicing, but if you're not getting the money in, it's not going to help you. You're going to crash and burn. And the third thing is, don't bring on people too soon. I know it's difficult, but you don't want to put a strain on your overheads. Try and do it, at home, or don't go out and go and get an office, or bring on board an admin person, or bring on board a top salesperson. Do it yourself initially and see if it works, and try and get your, what I would say is an MVP, minimum viable product or service. Get that out there to see what the uptake is, and then take it from there. Growing a business is not for sissies, as you know, and I know, and you've really got to try and balance the whole sort of equation around what cash are you bringing into the business, what can you pay yourself. Sometimes, as we know, I went about a year or two without pulling a salary, and that's sometimes difficult. It puts a strain on the system. And particularly if you're doing 2 jobs and it's a side hustle, often people go, oh my word, this is my passion, and I'm going to make a business out of it, and it crashes and burns because they either don't have the time, or they burn out, or they find that the product or the services, people don't really like it. And they kind of go, I thought this was a good product or service, but obviously it's not. And then what happens is they branch out and think, okay, well, let's do a little bit of the product plus X, maybe it will sell, and they get into all sorts of problems. So yeah, I would go for the top 3. 1, make sure your product service people want it, not that you think people want it. 2, make sure you got the sufficient cash flow, and I would say at least a 6 months, 6 to 12 months cash flow if you can, and don't bring on board people too soon.
Yeah.
Because that will burn your overhead.
Yeah, and the security cash that you need to have in the bank. I mean, I would also say that don't take out a loan, don't put yourself in debt, don't put any additional stress. Make sure that you save that money, and it's money that you have. Because and I'm sure you'd have experienced this as well, when you're trying to start something and you're trying to get off the ground, your expenditure, you can put down a budget, but you blow that budget so quickly.
Oh yeah. And it goes, eh?
It goes so quickly on the things that you never even thought, never even contemplated. But
yes.
Also,
and one of the 4th things I would absolutely do is pat yourself on the back every now and again and celebrate.
Yeah.
Celebrate those small wins, because I never forget when we first landed our first hustle as Blue Pebble. I promise I did a war dance around the lounge at the time. I was so happy. Meanwhile, it was not a lot of money, but you know what? We actually got our first client.
Yeah.
They had the confidence that we could deliver. So yeah, have fun. Have fun. Just have fun.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, as you say, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple, and make sure that you're resolving and you're providing service to a problem that a client has. And if you're solving a problem, there'll always be a market, as long as you're not solving a problem for yourself, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Debs, I cannot believe we've sped through an hour already. It's been, and we definitely need to do a part 2, because I think we can just talk and talk and talk. But thank you so much for your time and giving everyone a bit of insight into who Debbie Hill is and what your journey has been all about. I've learned so much, as usual. I've got my notepad out and I'm obviously taking notes as well. But yeah, it's been an incredible time chatting to you, and I hope you'd be open to a part 2.
Sean, thank you. Absolutely, I would, and thank you for reaching out and asking me. I'm privileged to be able to chat, and I would love to do a follow-up. And just be helpful and help people. And if this does in some way inspire people to do what they love, then I love that too. So thank you again.
Thanks, Debs. And I'll put some links down in the description to Debbie's company, the website, the Blue Pebble Group. Check them out. And if you are looking for coaching and that sort of thing, I would highly recommend that you reach out to Debs. But good people, our time has now elapsed. It has been a privilege to be with you once again. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, and most of all, stay inspired.